Hello and welcome to another episode of Inspiring Courage. I have the wonderful Lisa Bedlow here. She's a former head teacher and a well-being advocate, and I am delighted to have her here. I cannot wait for this conversation. Thank you for joining me, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I think we're going to be covering lots and lots and lots of really interesting bits of information that other people can make use of and gain from. So, yeah.
I hope so. I think the whole point of this podcast is to inspire courage in people, to think differently, to be differently. And that is what brought us together in the first place many years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about you in your own words?
Well, I've always been passionate about children, families. Even from a very young age, I just love children. My first job was as a nanny, working in some household. And actually, interestingly, I was shared between two next door neighbours and two very different families, two very different experiences, which maybe we'll touch on a bit later. So that was the beginning of my journey with working with children, other than babysitting. Then I went into teaching, head teacher, did that for 15 years. And then 5-6 years ago, I decided that being a head teacher was kind of limiting my potential. I felt I wanted to get out and do more well-being for children. So I set up something called Gabriel's Wellbeing and Education, which was all about supporting children, often who are a bit more neurodiverse or maybe struggling in the school system, because the school system is designed for children who like to just sit quite passively and be talked at. And some children, we know, a lot of children coming through today, they need to be learning by doing, they need to be moving, and there's not always a lot of that going on in the classroom. So I was doing woodland work with some colleagues who now continue to do Gabriel's Wellbeing, which is based in Reading. I moved to West Oxfordshire, so kind of left that behind. I'm still a director, but then set up Parenting with Passion, which is coaching parents and guiding them and helping them with any kind of issues really relating to being the best parent and helping your children to be the happiest children they can be. So that's kind of my background. When I stepped away from education, it was a very conscious decision. There were lots of things, even as a head teacher, when you're a teacher in a class, you can control your class and have autonomy over what happens in your class. When you're in the leadership, you can make changes within the system. But even as a head teacher, if you're working for the local authority, you're still quite limited by what the local authority feel is the right way forward, because obviously they're funded by the government. I was lucky I was in early years. So my nursery schools where you've got a bit more free reign. Children are learning by doing, they're learning by their own passions and interests. What I would love to see is for all schools to work in that way. So not just nursery schools where children are thriving and doing so well. If they could go on into primary and secondary schools where they could go to a learning zone area if they're passionate about music and just learn all of the curriculum through music or through science or whatever their interest. So that was kind of the original idea behind Gabriel's, actually. It was giving children a say in where their interests would be. So I have done a lot of supporting families who've stepped out of the education system and now home educating. So home education is growing and growing and growing. Not sure the government are great believers in it. And obviously there are a few families that maybe misuse that. But most families who choose home education, it's because they know that the current education system is not working for their child. They're not learning to the best of their ability. They're not learning things that are recent and relevant and that are going to be used out there in life. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, you've just touched upon lots and lots of things, but learning by doing is what stood out for me the most. And how has that changed, do you think, from, say, 10 years ago? And I have a sense that we've got COVID as like the pre-COVID and post-COVID was like a full stop, wasn't it, in our kind of life? So how do you think things have changed? Because I notice differences, but I'm curious to find out about your perspective. Do you think that this learning by doing is even more pressing right now compared to 10 years ago?
I would say yes. I mean, I think it actually started with the beginnings of the national curriculum, which was literally 1990, my first year of teaching. In came the national curriculum. We had folders, like kind of 10 or 12 folders lined up on our windowsills in the classroom of all these things we had to teach. And teachers are generally very people who want to do well, they want to do the right thing. So they'd be trying to work through these great big folders. Eventually they slimmed it down to, much smaller document. But I think trying to cover so many things loses often the teacher's own creativity.
Yep.
So teachers that love to sing or love to dance or are very arty crafty, years ago you could bring that into the classroom and the children would thrive on it and learn from it. You can't do that anymore. There's no room for any kind of self-creativity. There may be teachers that would argue that, yeah, there is on a Friday afternoon, but in my perspective, that's how it was. Pre-COVID, I can only really talk about pre-COVID because post-COVID, I wasn't in the classroom anymore. I actually had stepped away by then. And I have to say, I'm really pleased because I don't think I could have coped with the rigidity and the rules and the regulations and the almost, it was almost like the emotional needs of the children weren't being met. And that really worried me through the whole of COVID and everything it did. So, yeah, I think pre-COVID, it wasn't great. And I think post-COVID, there were some positives. I mean, a lot of children now learn on screen because we now have this thing called Zoom, which we never had before, or Teams or whatever it is you're using. So that's all been a good thing. So I can now help, say, a client in Scotland or Wales because I can jump on a screen, have a meeting with them and support them. So that is a bonus. But I think as far as children are concerned, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of too much screen learning anyway for children, but I think we don't know enough about, well, we're starting to learn that small young children's brains and all these what's going on screens isn't necessarily good for its development. And then, of course, you've got the other branch of the whole kind of social media side of things.
That's what comes to mind, the social media aspect. And because, again, that was a real kind of staple part of many people's lives during COVID. I think there's that dependability on social media to a certain extent. And I think that's where I'm noticing from the children I'm working with, that's where I'm noticing the disconnect. There's a disconnect. There's this kind of the inability to connect with people truly. And I noticed this in children who are going into employment, for example. I've worked with a couple of employers who have apprentices, and they often call on me and say they just need skills to be able to kind of hold conversation. So that element is missing, because whereas children in the past would have been in close relationship with each other, and kind of they would fight and they would make up and they would learn to conflict resolve, that seems to be missing right now because their communities are more and more online. And it's very easy to grow a huge following if you're producing content on social media. And it's very easy to join lots of communities, and it's very easy to drop out of them and just go invisible. It's very easy to block somebody if you don't agree with their view, rather than be there with them and relate to them in a way that you would have done in the past. So that's what I'm noticing missing quite a lot. And I think that's the effect of COVID. Yes, social media has its positives. I really am an advocate for using it in the right way. It's just, where are the boundaries? And as, again, social media gets kind of, blamed quite a lot. And I hate this language of blame. I don't do blame. Again, the responsibility falls with parents and educators to, again, demonstrate where the boundaries are and hold the boundaries for children. But then again, I notice when we go out for meals and outings, how parents are glued to their screen when they are even around the meal table. And it's like, really? So role modeling is something that we're passionate about and we want to talk about. So what are they role modeling to their children when they are constantly glued to the screen? So I think to a certain extent, we need to take responsibility and ownership of our own actions, of our own doing, in order to develop the awareness of the youth, because they have us to look up to learn from. Yeah.
And that's so true. Our children, right from birth, are looking at us for everything. They're looking at us. They learn to speak because they're talking to us. They learn to walk because their body kind of develops and wants to walk, but also because we're walking. They're watching their siblings. They're watching their friends. They're looking and learning all of the time. And I think, yes, if you are a parent that's constantly on your phone, the message you're giving to your child is actually, this takes priority over you. You're kind of there and being talked to and maybe having a quick flick up conversation. But and also we're still at an early stage. It's almost like it's still an experimental stage about what these things are doing to us.
Very much.
I am so grateful that they weren't around when my children were small, because I might have, in a stressful moment, thought, oh, I'm just going to play a game or something as a switch off, just have a mind break. Because it wasn't there, it just wasn't an option. So my own children didn't have that. But I know my daughter and my son and other people, who are now having children have these in their lives, and they might be just doing their shopping list, or they might be just checking on something or looking up something. Oh, my child's just done this, I just want to look that up. That's great, but you've still got to try and imagine how that looks to your child. So putting yourself in your child's shoes, how does that look? So I know families who have time when they'll say, like, no screens now, it's dinner time or whatever. They'll put screens down, and I think that's really powerful and really good. I think screens aren't going to go away, we know that, but I do think a big part of what we need to do, and I know people who've had serious implications because of social media, a lovely family in Reading that lost their son because of social media. I think we think we're protecting our children, we think we know, but actually we don't know the depths of it, and that's come out of their story and things they're sharing and the work they're now doing in honour of their son. If we can do nothing else but make sure our children are able to communicate with us, because then if they've seen something that's disturbed them, troubled them, made them feel a bit, I always say with young children, if it makes you feel whirly in the tummy, that's your gut feeling saying, oh, there's something not right here. Talk to someone. And if you can't talk to your parents, have someone at school, or not necessarily a friend. It needs to be an adult or someone who can help them to
needs to be a regulated adult. I often say it needs to be a regulated adult who has space to let you in, who has actually space to listen and be present. And I think we cannot underestimate that, the power of presence, right? We cannot underestimate it. And again, we go back to this in social media, there are exclusions and they just think that it's them, and, there are performance issues because people are comparing themselves constantly, and they feel under this perceived pressure. A lot of the children I work with, they have this perceived pressure on them. It's not even there, but it's when those communication channels are left open that you really have those conversations. I often encourage parents to just go on long drives with their children and have a conversation. The number of great conversations I've had with Harry when we're traveling to Cardiff, make use of those great times. I'm noticing more and more as he's growing, he doesn't want to do things with me as often as we used to, because we used to do an awful lot together, but I just choose the pockets of time that I have with him to still connect on the level that he's comfortable. So it's that power of connection and power of presence and the trust that we put on them. That's something else I want to talk to you about. I think for me, children often rise up or fall down to the level of expectation that we put on them. And it's the level of trust that we have on them. It's how we instill this belief in them that they know they're good enough, they're capable enough, they're worthy enough, that, if they really want to get something, they will do it, and there's no such thing as failure. These are really big concepts that we keep talking about, but what I'm really interested in is how we're demonstrating it, how we're doing it, right? The educators I talk about, they're like, oh, it's important to teach them the power of failure. How are you doing it? Power of connections. How are we doing it? So tell me what your thoughts are on how we can do more of that so that we give them the skills that they really need in the future place of work.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things you've said in there. I think firstly, like you said about if you're talking to a child or a young person whilst driving, you don't have the eye contact. So you can have some much more honest and open conversations, even walking out in nature, because you're not having to look at each other in the eye while you're walking or driving. I think somehow when there's no eye contact, they're able to perhaps be a bit more open and honest and have those kind of conversations. And I've done that with my children, so I totally support that. I think that's a great way, especially if you're a bit uncomfortable or you're. And for some parents, it's really hard to have that true, authentic conversation with your child. And how do I say this? Where do I start? They just don't know. Building that sort of trust and resilience in children to be able to make mistakes. What's that song? I get knocked down and I get up again. It's sort of so they know that your love is so unconditional.
Yes.
I think a lot of our generation grew up with very conditional. My parents, my mother particularly, very conditional love. I will love you if you do this and if you achieve that and if you blah, 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 blah. We don't do that anymore. We know now that children need total unconditional love. They need to know that if I completely make a disaster of X, you will still love me. If I try my best and it's a disaster, you will still love me. And I think a big part of children achieving is knowing that, particularly a parent who's meant to be their number one fan, fighting their corner. And I would say that to my children. I used to say, look, you know what, whatever happens, I'm still here and I'll still love you. And you're going to thrive and you're going to do well in life, whatever you do. There are still some families that don't do that because they're still copying the parenting they received. And that's not wrong. It's just not going to help your child move forward, because your child needs to know they can make mistakes. And actually part of learning is making mistakes. How many of us, I don't know, learning to ride a bike, you don't just get on a bike and ride it. You get on a bike, you fall over, you have accidents, you bump yourself. Driving lessons, we make mistakes, we forget to look over our shoulder, or we pull out and nearly have a crash, or we're learning all the time. And it's the same for our children. We actually need them to make mistakes, because actually the more mistakes you make, the more you're going to learn from that and gain from it and think, oh yeah, I won't do that next time. And I think that happens in all walks of life, whatever age you are. I think the other important thing is, now I'm a grandmother, is I talk to my young children, my grandchildren, and I'll say things like, they're 3 and 4 and 7, they're very young, but I'll say, I'll look after you and you look after me. So you're giving them some responsibility and ownership as well, because so when they won't hold my hand to cross the road, I'll say, oh, but I think I'd like you to hold my hand. I feel a bit nervous because this road's busy. So they're feeling that they're looking after me rather than I'm keeping them safe. It's a two-way thing. And I think children love that responsibility and ownership and kind of, oh yeah, I need to look after you. It's a two-way thing. And I think that's a really important part of it as well. Yeah. And I do think, yes, we know now there have been studies that have shown that children who have been home educated, yes, maybe who don't get any exams or formal qualifications, still go on to do really well in a workplace or a job or whatever it is they choose to do, because they're doing what they really love. I know for myself, I did struggle through school. I would have now been diagnosed with some kind of ADHD or autism or something, because I struggled to concentrate. I had a lot of trauma from childhood that was probably taking over a lot of my headspace. So I would only pick out snippets of information and I struggled to retain it. So I probably would have been a child now who would have been given a lot more support and nurture and sort of guidance that I wasn't given them back in the 70s or 80s. So I think for children, it's listening to them, knowing and recognizing that they're on a path, particularly creative children, because that's where education's missing out. It stopped things like, a lot of secondary schools no longer teach even additional languages because they can't get the teachers or they can't fit it into the curriculum. Arts, I know the arts are being pushed out, and yet they're so powerful for children who are creatives, children who love to create music, song, dance. Those are all the things that are not being valued, and yet they are hugely valuable. And for a child who's got a passion to dance, and that's all they've ever wanted to do, being told, no, sit down and learn Pythagoras.
That's your favorite question, isn't it?
It is my favorite question. I asked Vafa before, how many people have used Pythagoras since leaving school? I've yet to meet someone who said, oh yeah, I use it a lot in my daily work. I don't know anyone. And so for me, I have this theory that it's kind of just thrown out there to confuse us. It definitely confused me as a child. A lot of maths confused me as a child, but it's back to what you said. We want to teach children things that are going to be meaningful, purposeful, and help them in the outside world. So things like, learning how to apply for a job, look for a job, think about the kind of jobs they want to do, manage a mortgage. Do they want a mortgage? What type of mortgage? Finances. Do they want savings? How are they going to save? It's all these things that, how to grow their own food, how to sew their own clothes, which years ago were taught in schools. It was very much boys do woodwork, metalwork, and girls go off and do sewing and secretarial skills. Obviously, we don't want that divide. But almost like the Steiner method, where you're teaching children to be able to live independently and to be able to be self-sufficient and not reliant and dependent on those above.
Yeah, there's room for everything, isn't there? I think
so.
That it's important to have a cross section of disciplines that children are exposed to, that the curriculum needs to be broad. But I know what you mean when you say education isn't all that we need. And, coming from a background that values education hugely, I always, say part of my story is I became an explorer when my job wasn't filling my heart anymore. I went and met lots of fabulous entrepreneurs, and they just had a very different approach. And I just fell in love with that mentality. Some of them, not even having finished O levels or GCSEs, were leading amazing lives, and they were real kind, compassionate people. And then on the other hand, I experienced highly educated people who were less than pleasant to work with. So I was like, okay, so education is not all it's sold out to be to us. So what is it that we can take from our education system? Not saying that it's not important. It obviously is important, and I've invested heavily in the education of my child. So I'm not saying that's not important, but what additional skills do we need to put in place for them to decipher as they are beginning to kind of, leave their education, speaking back to my own child, to understand where they sit, what their preferences are, where they want to go and be of value. Because ultimately what we all want as human beings is to be of value, to be of service. That's part of the well-being ingredient set for me, when we are authentic in what we do, when we love what we do, when we are of value, when we feel valued, right? That's when we find our place in society. And not all of us are in the same boat, and that's absolutely okay. That's the very core of having that diversity and inclusion in the workplace, for example. So I think they are the skills that we need to develop in people. And when I say develop, not teach, because everybody's got it. It's innate in everybody. It's just that if it's not practiced, and if it's not experienced, and if it's not role modeled, then that stays dormant. So that's why I talk about developing these skills, because it's not about me teaching anybody. It's about them actually awakening what they already have inside of that wealth of knowledge that lays deep inside of them, but perhaps they haven't done. And that's what I do, or no matter who I work with, whether I go to education settings, whether I go to private sector, whether I go to, latterly amongst my Imogen colleagues, and I work in healthcare sector, no matter where you go, the needs and the desires are the same, because believe it or not, people are people, right?
It's true. It's true.
People are people, and people do peopling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do we bring people together? How do we create that kind of sense of unity, that you are good enough with what you have? And yes, we are always developing. Doesn't mean that we're not good enough in the first place. And I have my preferences, and I have my place that can work in harmony alongside you. And I think that would be the core of creating what we hear a lot, Lisa, and you and I have talked about this a lot, but we don't notice, and that's psychological safety in the workplace, right? So just to kind of take the conversation in a different direction, we've always talked about the leadership in the workplace. Who do we learn from? Who are our role models? Who are our anti-role models, right? Because we've talked in the past, and like me, you have had people that you have learned from, and people who you have thought, I'm not going to do that, right? I noticed this, and that doesn't sit well with me, so I'm not going to do that. So how are we doing that? I hear a lot in the forums that I go to that we need to create this psychologically safe space for people to be who they are. But I'm not noticing that existing in many places. Tell me what your experience is of having a psychologically safe workspace.
Yeah, I love that. Gosh, there's so many nuggets in there that you just said. One thing that really sprung to mind was, the whole safe. Children need to feel safe. They need to feel safe and secure to be able to learn. If you are learning from positive role models, you're learning great stuff. Going back a little bit to the whole social media thing, or not social media, but smartphones. If you're a child, and teenagers are already going through lots of angst and strange stuff because of hormones. If you're a child who struggles to communicate, have a conversation, it's much easier to get online and text. And even I know now, as an adult who didn't grow up with that, sometimes I think, oh, I'd much rather just text the window cleaner than pick up the phone and talk to him. So I think emotional intelligence is huge. And I think that's often something that isn't being either taught or learnt or understood because of so many other kind of things getting in the way. And if we are spending a lot of time on screens, maybe that's a big chunk that's missing. I do think, as you said about role models, I've got a number of experiences where I can talk about the role models, and I love your phrase of anti-role models. So here's my first one. Nanny, age 17, quite young, not, I've left home, I'm living in these people's houses. And one mother was just so warm, so lovely, so kind, so genuine, so honest. Other mother, super critical, always, finding out what I hadn't done rather than what I had done. Two really lovely mums, but just completely different styles of how they manage me, and perhaps not so much their children, but definitely how they manage me. That made me think, even at 17, I obviously prefer one style to the other, because one didn't represent the kind of person. I didn't warm to somebody who was going to be constantly criticizing. I had enough of that from my own mother. I didn't need that from her. Whereas the warm mother who would kind of say, oh, you've done all the ironing, or you've tidied the children's rooms, or you've made the beds, or thank you for doing it. That's how I responded well to. And then the same went on to school when I worked my first teaching practices, to when I was first teaching. The kind of head teachers that would notice and say, oh, I've noticed you've done this in your classroom. I really love that. Or I like that display you've done, or just taking that little bit of time to notice and acknowledge. And then there would be the head teacher who you literally didn't know whether she was going to smile and say hello or ignore you, or you could go days where she just didn't talk to you. Yep. Not a pleasant person. And then the head teacher who was so warm and smiley that she became a really dear friend, and I'm still friends with her daughter now. She sadly has died. But, there are people who you meet along your journey and you think, yep, I want to be like that person. Ooh, no, I don't want to be like that person. So you're learning, whether it's conscious or subconscious, probably subconscious in mine for sure. But I knew the kind of parent and the kind of head teacher that I wanted to be. And that was about trust, openness, authenticity. I know we both are big fans of dear Brené Brown. This Dare to Lead book, when I left headship, another lovely lady took on my role, and I had deputy head teams as well. I bought them a copy of this book because I thought this is going to help you.
That's a nice gift.
It's like handing over the baton. Yeah, I've got it to this good place. You're now going to, and they were amazing people. I had incredible people around me. And like Brené Brown, it's about employing people who are like-minded, who want to run a setting in the same way that you do, who have skills and techniques and ideas where we all work together as a full team, and we respect and value each other. And that means good and bad. So sometimes it might be having that difficult, challenging conversation, which a lot of us
but they're valuable. Those challenging conversations are valuable, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for various reasons. Yeah. And parents, sometimes you're having those challenging conversations with parents, and you're having to say, oh, actually, you can't, that's not appropriate for you to speak like that, act like that, be like that in this setting. And sometimes it was about starting with a kind of, what can I help you with? Are you okay?
Yeah.
And some of our parents, they were really struggling and challenged with parenting. One of the parents that came to mind literally recently died, sadly. She had to have some open heart surgery, and she had lupus. She had lots of conditions, but she struggled on, powered on, and would ask for advice, but clearly at times was finding it hard to parent her two boys, who were very lively, little challenging boys, lovely, but so it's about role modeling to your team, role modeling to those around you, role modeling to parents. And for me, particularly because we had these very young children in our nursery, children don't come with a handbook, as we know. They're all very unique and different. We also had an autism resource space. So we were sometimes guiding and supporting families who had a diagnosis for their child for autism. So there's lots of things that I think can be shared, conveyed, supporting your team, but also rippling down to the next generation. And sometimes that might be, if you're in a secondary school, that slightly is going to look different, because teenagers often don't want to be there. They're having to learn things that perhaps don't necessarily going back to, when you're having to learn something like Pythagoras that you don't really want to be learning about. That's just my top go-to. But say a child's got an art class and they're really not arty. They'd rather be going and doing Pythagoras. This is where the education system sometimes is letting children down, because it's pushing them to do things that actually for them just don't resonate. As an adult, if I gave you a book to read and you read the first 3 pages and thought, this just isn't my kind of book, Lisa, you wouldn't read it. You wouldn't think, oh, well, Lisa gave it to me, so I'm going to read all the way through. That's sometimes what children are being asked to do at school. And it feels to them like, this is such a waste of my time. Why am I doing this? They've got things they'd rather be doing because they're here to.
But do you know what I think? With a lot of those cases, again, I've experienced it both for myself as a student, and I've noticed it in Harry, that depending on the level of connectivity, emotional connectivity of the teacher with the child either gets to like a topic or dislike a topic, okay? 2 topics particularly for us stand in mind. And Harry was very close to dropping them at different parts of his GCSE. And then the teacher changed, and then he started thriving in them. Same topic, same child, different teacher.
Yeah, and I've got examples of that myself with my own children. So 100%.
So for me, we have teachers and we have educators in schools. Okay, teachers are there to just teach the syllabus, to get through the day, to get the grades, and we have educators who connect with children. When they connect, they understand them, and then they cater to their needs. They perhaps cater the language to what the child values and understands. And I know that classes are big. I know time is short. I know that teachers don't have the mental capacity even in themselves, because they don't have the support to do that. But that's what we need. If we are serious about developing a generation that's going to be fit for the world of future, and the world of future 5 years down the line, even if you want to call future 5 years down the line, it's going to look very different to how it looks today. So my constant question is, how are we preparing our children for the future? How are we making them future ready? Okay. If we're not connecting with them, how do they know that they matter? How do they know that they have value? Because I don't know your experience. My experience of a lot of youth is that they feel invisible. Actually, can I just correct that? It's not just in youth, it's also in professionals. One of the guys that's actually I've done a podcast episode with, he is a radiographer by background, and he is doing his PhD, his research was around radiographer burnout. And when he spoke to a wide range of radiographers, they suggest that they are the invisible profession. So if adults, if professionals that deliver the value that they do in a healthcare setting feel unvalued and invisible, then we have huge problems, right? I go out there. This is a source of laughter for my friends and my partner and Harry, even to a certain extent. It's impossible for me to go out there, to go to a coffee shop, to go to a restaurant, to go to a shoe shop, and not engage with a person who is serving us. It's impossible. Okay. And the number of free drinks, free meals, 20% discounts I've had, because people feel visible when you speak with them. And they're like, I've had people say to me, you're so nice. I've never had anybody speak to me like that. All I've done is ask about how their day's been going. I have taken interest in the human that's behind that professional. And for me, that's the moment of transformation for these people. They actually believe that they have value, that they are seen, that they are visible. How much of that are we doing in schools to our people? How much are we doing as team leaders to our team members? And that's again going to bring me back to this psychologically safe space that we all want to create. And Brené Brown is a huge advocate for it. I was at a talk at a recent conference, and the lady was talking about actually a lot of Dare to Lead's kind of nuggets. And she asked the audience, room full of people, how psychologically safe they felt in their job.
Wow.
And I'm sat right in the middle of the auditorium, and in true Vafa fashion, I go, nothing. Lisa, nothing. No shakes to say no, we don't. No nods to say yes, we do. And I'm like, what does this mean? Do they know what psychological safety is?
Yeah.
Do they have anything to compare it to?
Yeah. Yeah.
And do they feel it?
Yeah.
Because for me, silence screams a big no.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And are they sitting with their colleagues thinking, well, I can't let them know that. Yeah.
And then I walked away from that conference, and that really was like the moment that shook me up during the whole day. Lots of great conversations, lots of great talks, questions posed. And this question stood out for me. And because it's personal, because I've experienced it. And on the way home, I was thinking, of course they don't feel psychologically safe. Remember yourself 7 years ago. Remember yourself 6 years ago when you finally set up your business and you went online with your business. Okay. Because unfortunately, as I was setting up, yes, I had to be present online, but I was an in-person networker. I was getting a lot of my business by meeting people. That's how I've developed my business. And then COVID happens. And then I have zero digital footprint, literally zero digital footprint. My Facebook is for my close friends and family. It's a closed Facebook group. My LinkedIn, yes, I have been active for a few years because I've been observing who's doing what else there is out there that I can do. Because at one point in time, I thought, I don't have any other skills but radiography. I can't do anything else. So LinkedIn was basically a place of learning and development for me. But I hadn't posted. I wasn't visible. I had no footprint. And then all of a sudden COVID happens and we lose that in-person ability. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I now need to think about something else. And that's how Inspiring Courage podcast came about. But the point of the conversation is that I used to get sweaty palms every time I posted because I'm like, oh, what are they going to think? What are they going to think? And I'm like, but you're not part of the system anymore. It doesn't matter what they think. So psychological safety was missing hugely. So I thought to myself, why am I surprised? How quickly we forget, right?
It's so true.
Quickly we forget. So I left thinking, okay, this is something that we really need to work with. And that's what I do when I go into organizations, when we have real, true, authentic conversations around the table. That's what we create. And by example, they know what it feels like. So for me, if you've never experienced something, you can't replicate it. Whereas when you experience it and you know how valuable it is, that's when you develop the skills to go and replicate it. And that's part of the work that I do. No matter where I go, I could go and deliver a 90-minute workshop at Tessen conference, and I've never come across the 15 people in the room. But after 15, 20 minutes, we're having really great conversations. They are sharing personal stories, things that they probably wouldn't have shared with their colleagues. They don't know each other when they come. So that's the value of creating that psychologically safe place. People feel easy about sharing all of themselves. And that's what we need in order to change the face of education and the face of healthcare, because both of them are struggling, if we're honest at the moment, right? We need a different, and just to talk about it isn't enough. How are we doing it? And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for champions that will create those spaces that we could start putting little teams of people together. I've already started. My team call themselves agents of change. They come to our sessions with cupcakes with agents of change written.
That's amazing.
So they recognize themselves as that. That's what we need. We need more of those individuals in more pockets, so that by ripple effect, we could create psychologically safe spaces. We could create a different way of being and doing.
Yeah.
And that's what wakes me up and keeps me fulfilled every day of the week. I don't know about you. Every time I do it, I've walked one more step towards my purpose.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I again, so many little nuggets in there. And I think you're right about people feeling visible. And I think that can happen within the workplace. It can also happen within the home. It can happen in loads of places. But I do think we are, and again, COVID times, we recognized then how important community and connection is. You're really good at connection, as you said. You would go to a cafe, a restaurant, whatever, and start chatting. I'm the same. My children would say, "Oh, Mum,
Not again.
why do you have to chat to these people?" And I get it. They want me to talk to them. But it is about just valuing and acknowledging, and for people to be seen. Because if you're there, yes, it's their job and they're getting paid for it, but actually it's still an act of service. They're being, they're there serving you a meal or a drink or whatever. It's courtesy and it's kindness.
It's courtesy.
It's like we shouldn't have to be reminding people to be kind. It's one of my favourite things within the nursery. I would say to the children, "Is that kind?" And they kind of look and they might then share. But it's that just sometimes reminding people it's not actually that hard. It's actually easier, I think, to be kind than to be horrible. But it's just reminding to share. Yeah, so connection is really, really huge. And I think the difficulty is we are trying to change something that's gone generation. So many generations where we haven't had this.
When did we lose it?
I don't know. I think that's a really good question. When did we lose it? I don't know.
How did we lose it? So honestly, that's a real question for me. I mean, I love what I do. I do leadership training or, I do kind of capability building and I love it. I'm not, but why is it needed?
Yeah.
So I went to the funeral of one of my managers recently. And then I, again, walked away, lots of reflections, walked away thinking, I doubt very much if she went to a single leadership training. But at the core of it, she cared.
Yeah.
Literally, that's what it was. She cared. She was unbiased.
Yeah.
And she had an open door policy.
Lovely. And what a legacy to leave behind.
For right?
Anyone who's worked with her, they're going to know that and think,
when did we lose that?
I think, and again, going back to Brené Brown, people who lack confidence will hide it, cover it by shaming other people, putting them down, not trusting, taking over. It's an ego thing, isn't it? To come in and sort of be this, "Oh, well, I'm bigger and better than you, and I'm going to make you feel, I'm going to keep you small so that I still look big." That's their perception. Obviously, that's not, who wants to be a bully? I wouldn't want to be a bully. It's not my style of leadership at all. But I think that's probably where it's come in. I think it's sometimes come deriving from shame, guilt, humiliation, things that have happened probably in their own childhood or even in their parents' childhood, because we follow on from things that have happened, to our parents. Because
didn't start with us.
So no, and I think I'm thinking back. When did all this? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? That's a really, really deep.
I think it's
question.
Introduction of new layers of management. I think that's what I kind of put it to. When you're as old as me and you've worked for I worked for 25 years before I kind of crashed and burned, as I usually say. And that was 6 years ago. So about 30 years ago, we didn't have the layers of management that we have now. It was different, again, to a certain extent, because you explained whether or not a specific head was going to be nice or not. You never knew. And it was a similar culture where I trained in that if you said good morning to the head of department and if she nodded, you knew that you were in the house. You were one of the favorites. That is particularly typical of the radiography world. Actually, the imaging world has been interesting, shall we say. But for me, it's the introduction of layers and layers. And as you say, people then need to be seen as knowing it all. They don't feel comfortable to say, well, actually, you're the one doing the work. I'm not experienced in the work that you do, especially if they're from a different industry.
Yeah.
Tell me,
Yeah, exactly that.
You know,
I think that hierarchical and also that kind of imposter syndrome. So people,
huge.
rather than saying, which I was quite interestingly, I was quite happy to say, do you know, I don't know this. I'm going to find someone who does. But I realize not everyone is like that. So yeah, rather than saying, I don't know, it's some people just step in and have this, well, I know, and they'll just make it up as they go along, or they'll, you know, do the wrong thing or blame somebody else for doing the wrong thing, even if it was their fault, not taking responsibility and ownership. I think that's probably where it's come from. It's come from,
The
yeah,
courage to
people
stand
who
up,
don't have the
actually.
courage to say, oh, I
Yeah.
made a mistake. And I can think back to a number of times as a head teacher where some quite major things happen, safeguarding issues. And I thought, I need to let families know that this has happened, because then we're putting our hands up and saying, look, this happened. This is how we dealt with it. It's all good now. Because then there was no, oh, don't tell anyone because the shame thing. I thought, no, let's just be really open about this. And that happened a couple of times. And it meant parents really trusted
I was
in
going
our
to say
care.
that creates trust.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you're open and honest, so long as you say this is the solution. For me, I believe in saying, okay, this is a problem that we experience and this is the solution that we implemented or we are going to.
Yeah.
So not
Yeah.
taking problems to people, but being proactive. Again, proactivity in finding solutions is missing. Something you said earlier brought to mind that's the way that one parent criticized you, the other parent praised you. And that's what it is. It's, when we are solution focused, we look for more positives. When we are noticing what's happening that's right, we find evidence both internally and externally that things are going well. And when we're looking for trouble, which is again a sign of trauma, isn't it? Hypervigilism is to a certain extent sign of something going on. The more we look for that, the more evidence we find. So it's really interesting that the courage that you demonstrated, you were saying about 21 years ago, to be different as a head teacher, right?
Yeah.
You introduced well-being into the teacher training programs, and they're like, who are you? What do you mean? What are you talking about, right?
Yeah, I remember it so clearly. I'd been the deputy head at this school, and I'd had to sort of have 3 attempts to actually apply for the headship because of the way the system worked in those days. When I got the headship, I decided our very first inset training day would be a well-being day. Even though I'd worked with these people for a couple of years and I knew them to be incredible, wonderful people, I felt they need something for them so that they're feeling like, So we had a reflexologist came in and an Indian head massage and Bowen technique, which is a little bit like a Reiki style, and various things all around well-being. And 21 years ago, that was not done. That I didn't know any other teachers, any other head teachers who were doing that. They weren't doing well-being days. Now it's a big thing. And then there was kind of a head teacher's well-being program created, and things did come on from then, thank goodness. Because if the head's in a good space, then the staff are in a good space, then the children and the families are in a good space. So we know this to be true. And I think it's the same in a family, isn't it? It's the same if the parent is in a good space, they're going to be able to be a better parent to their child than if they're stressed out and snappy and shouting. And, it's the same, whatever organization you are, if you, as the top of, if you want to do it in that way, hierarchically, if you're at the top and you're leading a team, you need to be in a really good place to be able to lead your team, a happy team. Because you're
talking about having that emotional intelligence again, isn't it? And what's emotional intelligence? It's being able to relate to yourself so that you can relate to the world around you. It's about being able to regulate, being able to manage the emotions. But how do you do that? You've got to have a level of self-awareness to know where you are, what you're experiencing, what's happening, and the kind of know-how of, okay, what am I going to do about it, rather than jump into that reactive kind of situation that we find ourselves in very often. And it's a practice. It's not something that you read and you learn about. Funnily enough, I was coaching a wonderful older lady not so long ago, and the questions that I was asking and what she was saying, she was giving me textbook perfect responses. Okay. And at one moment in time, I said to her, which one of these do you really own? And she said, none of them.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this current world that everybody's listening to podcasts, reading books, personal development industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to be careful of how much information we consume. Because if it's not relatable to our life, if we're not applying it in real life, what's the value? What's the value of knowing if you're not doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And really taking it on board. I mean, how often, we have these conversations where it's like, do you follow your heart? Do you follow your head? I say always heart, because actually your heart is going to make the right decision, because it's about caring, it's about kindness, it's about authenticity, it's about truth, vulnerability, all of those things, which a lot of people, I appreciate, find really, really tricky. They don't, it's not easy.
It's a practice.
It's a practice. It's a practice. It's about not, what's the word? I guess it's about not, it's not caring, because of course we do care. None of us want to look foolish or look like we're not doing our job properly, but it's about recognizing, I don't know it all, I'm still learning. And I quote that lovely Louis Armstrong song about, when he sings about the children, and they'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I do think, we're still learning ourselves. We're still making mistakes. We're still,
always.
We never
Life
get
is an
there.
evolution.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the beautiful thing about it.
Yeah.
Who wants to know it all?
Well, no, quite. And that's what I'm loving about getting older, is I'm getting older and wiser. I'm now the old wise woman of the village, or whatever, who can give out advice and tips, because I've actually seen this not just once, twice, but many times, where I can help and guide and support. And I do think that each generation that's coming through are coming through with really open hearts. I think there's a lot of kindness and care from our younger generations. They want to have a kinder world. They also want a work-life balance.
They're more on purpose, definitely.
They've seen us working ridiculous hours and thought, well, I don't want that. I want to have a life. And who can blame them? Good for them. Get out there, do work that you love. Because if you love what you do and do what you love, it never feels like work. I still do. I just get out of bed every day with joy in my heart for what's ahead of me that day. Even on the dreaded Ofsted days, it was like, well, you know what? I'm going to show them today just what an amazing team we are and how fantastic these children are learning in our setting. See it with a positive heart, rather than, oh my God, we got Ofsted coming in. This is going to be terrible. We're all going to be, it's a choice, isn't it? Choose the good, positive outcome, or the not so good. So
because again, they're people, aren't they? But we again put them on pedestal perhaps and think we have to please, and rather than demonstrate what we have already.
And fight your corner sometimes. We found, particularly as early years, sometimes we really did have to fight our corner, because the person coming to Ofsted inspect us might be actually primary or even secondary trained. So it's like, no, this is early years. This is how we learn. This is how it's different. So
it's having the expertise again, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we have a lot to learn from the early years, actually. I loved Harry's early years education. Loved them. They're my happiest memories.
And why is that? Because the child can walk into this environment and choose which areas they want to go and play and explore. And so if they're in a very multi-sensory experience, schema, they can go and play in the sand and the water and the Play-Doh and have that lovely. When they go into school, they might want that, but they're not given that. They're given, right, come on, we're going to sit down. We've got a spelling test. It all changes. So there's no, what I'd call it's those sort of soft skills, the well-being, let's help you to regulate and calm and just feel ready to learn. Wouldn't it be great if we started every school day with do you want to have half an hour of Play-Doh, sand, water, anything, sport, whatever works for that child that's going to calm them. I know some schools have introduced kind of well-being time where they might do a short meditation or a relaxation, or some schools do this walk the mile around the, that's a good start too for children maybe that literally got up, had breakfast, got in a car, got to school, haven't yet moved. But it's finding ways that are going to help them to be who they need to be. They're on this planet to make a difference, and we need to help them to find that. And I'd love it if every school worked in a way like a nursery, because children in nursery are so happy, carefree. They don't have to ask to go to the toilet. They just go because they're independent beings. Suddenly they go to school and it's like, they have to ask to go to the toilet. Yeah, we're taking away any kind of responsibility. And I always feel that's such a shame. And there's always an argument, oh, it's a safeguarding thing. Is it really? They're somewhere in the school. They won't have left the building. If they've gone to the toilet, they either need to go to the toilet or they're really bored.
You can trust.
It's trust. It's back to trust.
Yeah, trust them and trust that you're creating an environment that they want to return to after their short toilet break.
If you're a good teacher, they don't want to miss your lesson.
They want to be there. So what are you doing to make them want to be there?
So
how do they matter? How are they important in the grand scheme of things? And how are you connecting? For me, how are you connecting with that individual? Because if you're not,
you're the one in the wrong. Not the child. It's not their fault they're not connecting. It's you and your style of teaching.
As a teacher, I think as a responsible adult, it's your job to find ways of connecting. And once you do that, then you've got them for life.
And going back to what you said about those teachers that make a difference, they light up your life. My daughter was always really mathematical, sciencey, those kind of subjects. Never a big fan of English at all. But she had this amazing teacher who just absolutely lit her fire when it came to English, to the degree that she was getting ready to say, I want to do A-level English. That teacher left. So she said, I don't want to do A-level English if it's not with her. But you're right. If you've got the right teacher, I can think back to teachers that ignited my fire. I'm sure you can too. And they are the ones that genuinely love their subject, genuinely connect with the students and really show genuine care and compassion and want they want to get you learning and enjoying and loving the subject as much as them. And they are the ones they are the shining lights.
And that's what we need. We need more care.
We need more of those.
We need more of those. What have we not talked about today that you wanted
What
to
have we not talked? I don't know. I think we've probably covered everything. I guess it is just that whole building skills for young people. Children these days, young people who are not connecting face to face, get more of that. Get them doing more of that, because when they're doing it, they actually start to realize they're quite good at this. They can have a conversation. They can talk to people. Even pre-social media, teenagers would struggle with that. That's not a new thing. I think it is to do with that whole kind of embarrassment. I remember my parents saying, come and say hello to this person. And it will be like, oh, it's embarrassing. Because you're so lacking in confidence as a teenager. But actually, the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's like the child who maybe goes and gets a job in a cake shop or a pub, and they're starting to communicate face to face with people, having that eye contact, and it builds their confidence. They start to realize, oh, I can do this, and I am quite good at it. So it's about giving them the skills to recognize. I think education of the future. What does that look like? Our young people are going to be doing jobs that are not even around yet. Exactly. We know that. We know there's change, rapid change. We can't train them to do a job we don't know exists because we don't know what that's going to be. But what we can train them to do is believe in themselves, have resilience to make mistakes, be able to take risks. They say this of so many business owners. How many business owners make mistakes and fail those first sort of 5, 10, 20 times sometimes? But eventually, eventually they get there and they keep, it is that persistence, isn't it? It's keep chomping at the bit, aiming for whatever it is you're aiming for. Keep going, don't give up, persist. And you might fall at this hurdle and drop at that hurdle, but if it's really meant to be your sole purpose, you'll get there and you'll do it even better because of the mistakes.
That's what we talk about often, that life isn't linear, right? We have an outcome in mind. We have something that we're walking toward, but the path isn't a linear path, right? And you might go off piste a little bit, but then you don't know what lays there. You don't know who else you might meet. You don't know how that slight deviation is actually going to work better for you. And again, I say this from experience. I started doing personal coaching. That's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to work with children. I was really passionate about doing that. And then soon I discovered that, I have to work with the parents as well, because children aren't autonomous. They are still under the care of the parents, and parents are amazing. Everything that I say, it's without any judgment. Again, it's because we have learned parenting, as you say, from our parents. And sometimes if we haven't kind of invested in our own personal growth. And sometimes children are very different and they have very different preferences to us, and we don't know how to connect, and we don't know what's going on with them. There are lots of elements to why parents may need a little bit of help. But when I started doing that, I just evolved the business. I thought, okay, I need to do some family coaching. And then I was getting amazing results. People were coming back saying, we shared that with our friends in the pub last night and they all loved it. I'm like, great, maybe I need to do more of this and do more of the work with the adults. So I kind of developed the business to do more coaching with adults. And then I thought, this is just amazing. I would love to be able to, and I miss that kind of team feeling because I'm a people's person. What can I do to take my work to a team? Hang on a minute. Why don't I just have my own teams come together? I'll just have group coaching sessions. So I developed those and people came, and that's how I've ended up where I've ended up in education, in healthcare, in corporates, because people come and say, this is just amazing. This is different because it's a mix of personal development and leadership skills and just having fun, just having fun being us, finding that safety in the table that we sit around and permitting our real self to come out. And that's what's been most valuable. And then the business just took a different turn altogether. Did I ever foresee myself working within the NHS again? Never. I was persuaded to go back in reluctantly, and I'm so happy that I did because again I found places of belonging where I didn't ever feel like I belong, because like you, I was one of the rebels and just never kind of found the place of belonging when I was there. So just stay open. For me, the value of staying open, the flexibility in our attitude is super important. And that's something we don't develop in our children.
That's it.
Because they have this end of exam kind of, vision that I've got to get 7, 8s or 9s to get to whatever, I've got to get this, that, and the other so that I can do it. I've got to do that in my A-levels so I can get to university. But where's the flexibility? At what point do we say to them, explore? Okay, do all of that. If it doesn't work, please tell me it's not working. Don't stay in it just because you've started it, right? To a certain extent, I think there's a boundary. Again, we can't kind of say that, give up. It's not about giving up. But if, assess that, kind of reflect and assess when you do something. That's how you stay curious. You stay open to other possibilities. Just because we thought this was the end purpose for us doesn't mean that it's going to be there.
So true. And how often do we ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? As if there can only be one thing. I often, children answer all sorts of interesting things, but it's my answer when if I was to ask that question and they said, I think I'd like to be a pirate, I'd say, that sounds like fun. Just let them believe they can be whatever they want to be. And short term initially they can be a pirate, and then the next day they might want to be a Christmas tree or but just go with it. So I remember my son saying he used to be obsessed with tractors and dustbin lorries. So when he was 3 and said, I want to be a tractor driver, I want to be a dustbin lorry driver, I'd be like, you can be whatever you like, darling, because it's giving them that hope, the hopes, the dreams, the aspirations, and those will change over time. And they may end up doing 5, 6, 7, 10 different jobs in their lifetime, and that's all okay.
And that's okay.
It's really, and that's the difference from certainly my parents' generation, where you literally left school, got a job, stayed until you retired, had your retirement, that was it. What a boring life that must have been.
That was it's just part of our journey as well. And then I think we're the ones that broke it. Wouldn't it be a better question if we asked them, who do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. That's a really good question.
Because it's about them. Right? Who are they in their core?
I like that.
They can take that with them, no matter where they go, no matter what they do.
And sometimes children just say, I want to be kind, I want to help people. And I just think, wow, that's really quite a lovely thing to hear, that children, even very young, have that kind of authenticity within their heart, that they know they want to be kind.
But how
they
do we
want to help
keep
people.
it? How do we keep
I
it
know,
alive?
I know, I
Yeah.
know. And that is the
They
thing.
do.
Depending on
It's how do we keep it alive?
what's coming their way and what they're kind of hit with. And for children, often, children who perhaps have come from a very dysfunctional, unhappy home, they may demonstrate their sadness through harming other children or being unkind. So it's about, working with those children to kind of hold the
There's
mirror up.
always an unmet need, isn't it? So there's always something behind the behavior. So it's, again, rather than labeling them as troubled children, I work with troubled children in some settings. They're not. They are the loveliest.
They are. They've just had some really unfortunate
they've got this label, and maybe they actually play on the label.
Some do. Yeah.
Because
well, they become the label.
They become the label.
Well,
that sense of identity
they
own.
Or I am this, or I am that.
Yes.
And that is true.
And that's something we haven't touched upon maybe in another episode.
Yeah.
But it is about that identity. And whilst it's super important, we have this same belief that whilst it's super important for people to experiment and explore with what they are and the labels, but what are the labels? How do we define ourselves with the labels? How do they matter? Why do we feel the need to have those labels attached to us? And I think that's a conversation for another time.
Definitely. I'd love to come back another time. Thank you
for being here.
Oh, I've
it's
loved
been
it.
a pleasure speaking with you as always.
Thank you so much.
We'll meet again.